Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Dad. It's Francis and Nate, your two dads are here. It's the beginning of April. We are, already a fourth of the way through the year. Time flies when you're horrified at the existence of your own country, I guess. How are you doing, Nate?
I'm okay. You know, yesterday I had a chance to speak with because we have the new childminder because the previous one is, getting ready to have a baby like in a couple of weeks. And the new one is a bit older, and she's Argentinian, but she moved back to Europe because her parents were from Spain, but they got exiled by Franco, and she moved back basically once the dictatorship ended. And she dropped something on me yesterday that was kind of amazing, and I don't think she was expecting my response. She was just talking about some of this stuff and just kind of very cautiously mentioned like, well, her dad was, he fought for the Republicans in the Spanish Civil War. He volunteered to fight against the Nazis. I don't know with whom, basically because he was really hardline anti-fascist in World War II. He survived the war and then got more or less politically repressed and forced out by Franco, and they wound up moving to Argentina. And she said that like between his two biggest complaints were the sort of like forced economic encapsulation of Europe by America, in particular, like being forced to buy American products like via the way that like the Marshall Plan worked, but then specifically the degree to which the U.S. rehabilitated most of the Nazis and put them back in power in West Germany. He was like, I fucking hate America. I fucking hate Americans. And I hope that I live long enough to watch the United States collapse. That would be my greatest joy. Now, he died. Obviously, he would be, he'd be close to 100 years old. And she was like, yeah, it's funny. She's like, I've met a lot of Americans that are really nice, but yeah, my dad definitely never changed his opinion. And then I got some really bad news about a thing I'll talk about in a second that involves the U.S. government just being a piece of shit. And I told her, I was like, because I'd mentioned the story before, and I told her that I got in this update, and I said, this might come as a surprise, but the more the time goes on and I watch this, the more I think me and your dad probably share the same opinion about America. It's just I'm from there to have a passport, like I'm a citizen. So
yeah, I feel like a lot of people are feeling the same way about America. Like I don't want anybody to get hurt, right? I don't want the collapse of the United States because I know that is going to hurt, especially people who are vulnerable and don't have the resources that I might have access to. At the same time, it is a bit of schadenfreude to watch this country that like marked itself as this great shining city on the hill, beacon of the world. And you and I have read enough history books, and we know enough about history. I learned mostly through you and Joe on Lines Led by Donkeys, but you end up learning that the United States is just run by a bunch of assholes, and always has been, and has always been incredibly racist. I mean, I think Ruby Bridges is still alive. There's still a lot of horrible American history that still exists out there. And when I grew up, you kind of think like, well, we're on the other side of all that, right? We're on the other side of Nazism. We're on the other side of all of these problems that stem from racism. And then suddenly it comes back. And, of course, if you look at any of our history over the last 30 to 40 years that I've been alive, it's always been there. It's always, since Bill Clinton talking about welfare queens and, Reagan mostly, but,
Reagan talked about welfare queens and, the lady driving a Cadillac collecting, millions of dollars from welfare. And then Bill Clinton passed the Welfare Reform Act or whatever the fuck it was called that basically ended almost all cash assistance in the United States and created this really, really big spike moment in child poverty in America. But they did it out of presenting themselves as being like, well, we're just willing to make a tough choice and also we're racist. And, that it is what it is. And people still talk. Here's the funny thing is Republicans still talk about fucking Democrat voters getting their welfare checks. It's like because they're just racist and they don't know that it doesn't fucking exist. It doesn't exist
work
anymore.
That way.
It hasn't existed since 1996. Guess what, guys? That was 29 years ago. I know that's really hard. We always want to think that the 70s was 20 years ago or the 2000s was yesterday. The 80s was 20. Guys, 1996 was 29 years ago.
So it's not been great. It's not been great to watch. We had a couple wins, though. It's nice to see all of the money that Elon Musk dumped into the Wisconsin Supreme Court race was a complete waste of time and effort and money, even though like we all know that he's, breaking the law and nobody's actually going to do anything about it. But we've got that. And then Cory Booker, he did the the filibuster for 25 hours. So, you know, there's these little bright little gems inside of all the turds, but it's still a gigantic fucking turd of a country.
Well, I mean, like, there's things where people get in trouble, but like, I don't know, I'm just seeing people at a certain point, I live far away, so it's not affecting me, and I don't want to be glib because I don't think the people that are affected would be particularly helped or pleased by that. But I just think that the extent to which you see that it's basically open season on just completely defying anything that tells you no, even if it's from a federal judge. Like, they could potentially put people in prison or, you know, charge them with contempt and stuff. That might happen in some of these cases, but Trump can also just pardon them. Like, he can do whatever he wants. And also, he's the king now. And also, like, the people that they've been arbitrarily deporting to El Salvador, like, they have no track of them. They have no idea what happened to those people. And I think that's the point.
They just kind of drop them off and
then they get disappeared into the hell nexus. And the idea is that they want to be able to tell both people who want to claim asylum or who are undocumented in America, but also to like hot dog neck ass Trump voters who just love seeing pain inflicted on people they don't like. They want to make it convincing enough for people to think you go there and you never come back because we kill you. They might be doing that. That might be the case, but what's more important, in my opinion, to them is they want people to believe that's the case because they want it to titillate and spark joy amongst, I don't know, guys with red hats who are like 2 Bud Lights away from doing fucking family destruction, and also people they want to scare away from any proximity to, you know, emigrating, being an immigrant, seeking asylum, etc.
Yeah, it's fucked up that when you look at approval ratings, you'll see that Trump is very unpopular, and so is Elon Musk, except on immigration. For some reason, you know, destroying the destruction of our own systems and our own federal government, that's all bad. But like when it comes to disappearing somebody off the streets and sending them to a work camp in El Salvador where we never see them anymore, that somehow is okay for a lot of people. And I think Americans, if anything, we're incredibly selfish. And so when it's something that's like, well, this affects me, so it's bad, but this affects you, so I don't care.
I guess at the end of the day, it's like, does that really surprise you though? I mean,
no, absolutely not.
Americans, like, the closest thing they have to some sort of like arbitrary level of deprivation and cruelty like that is, I mean, well, quite frankly, it's like you could just be at the airport terminal and someone's just having a bad day and just does a fucking mass shooting and just, you know, blows your face off. And it's like the American response to that is like, is what it is. Damn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, so I think expecting empathy from a country where people have none, expecting people to view someone's situation as if they were in their shoes in a country where, like, that's considered weakness, that's considered a rhetorical sleight of hand, that's considered like not being willing to face, you know, the capital T truth that's presented to you by generation upon generation of racist fucking dudes on the radio, on talk radio, and now on, you know, new media streaming podcasts, whatever, the same fucking shit, the same crybaby ass fucking self-victimizing thing about how all your problems are because of like the libs and the SJWs. And before that, it was the feminazis, you know, and the whatever the fuck, the black power activists they used to say in the 90s and shit, trying to fucking like all the stuff, everything from Rush Limbaugh to Mike Pence before they tried to kill him for being woke, all the way up till now with what you've got where like anything that's coded as like male, whether it's like teen boys and up, you know, exercise, sports, fitness, extreme sports, outdoor shit, everything is fucking right wing coded. Like, you create the situation and it's like, fine, you know, if dudes want to fucking lift weights and be like, actually I'm jacked as hell, but it's not, you know, admiring that guy's muscles is not homoerotic because I'm anti-woke. I don't really care. But at the end of the day, the thing that kills me is so much of this politics is based on aggressive, pathetic self-victimization constantly for all this rugged individualist shit that they are always trying to sell on, like being a man. Somehow, whenever you have an inconvenience and you see someone, you have to be like, wait, I'm a tough, rugged individualist, but also my problems are impossible to solve by me because of the grand conspiracy by non-binary people with blue hair or something. And I'm
George Soros.
It's like it's a cliche to be like the fascist viewpoint sees the enemy as impossibly weak and impossibly strong. But I will say, if you believe that your life isn't going the way you want because of blue-haired non-binary people, I can say this, you know, and subtract, you know, I'll just speak your language. I'll speak the language of the people who believe this. You are emphatically a fucking pussy. I'm sorry. You are a pussy. Like, I will speak like you. Man up. Fucking acknowledge your own failings and improve. Do better. But what you can't do is be like, oh, I couldn't get into West Point because of the fucking black lesbians, like fucking Charlie Kirk. I think it was Charlie Kirk, or what was the other one? Was it the one with the weirder face?
Posobiec?
Maybe Jack Posobiec, maybe Charlie Kirk. One of them literally said, and then here's the funny thing. That was his story. I was supposed to go to West Point, but they decided they'd let a black lesbian, and said he didn't even fucking apply. Like, how are you gonna do stolen valor to lie about how you suck at school and are a bigger pussy than you even are? How are you gonna do? But you realize, Francis, that's how you gain currency with these people. It seems is to sell yourself as victimized by, like, the woke libs and whatever they're calling them now, because it's always some new stupid acronym or neologism. And it's like, look, I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm not trying to denigrate women. I'm not trying to objectify anything. What I'm trying to say is that these guys have this whole linguistic taxonomy for how they assess things. And it's always like alphas and betas and cucks and SJWs and woke and fucking libtards and whatever they want to say. All this fucked up shit they say. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like they have this force field around themselves where they can never see anything as being a natural consequence of anything about them or their community, who they are, or just bad luck. It's always like, I'm sorry, man. You guys are always going on about like fucking the weirder ones, the more closeted gay versions of you guys, like fucking, who's that guy who's obsessed with Hungary? And he sucks really bad too. The guy with the mustache who did like the weird, Rod Dreher. That's his name, Rod Dreher.
Oh, okay.
Rod Dreher banging on about like just this idea that fucking everything about your life is somehow a betrayal. It's like a grand conspiracy. All these people are conspiring against you, and the government's doing it, with Soros money and the Great Replacement shit. Like but they always want to bang on about like Judeo-Christian ethics. That's their thing, right? It's like, well, how can we exclude Muslims? Oh, we have a Judeo-Christian ethic. It's like us famously big lovers of the Jews. We're going to say that we are, but it's like these guys, and it's like, okay, all right, well then I'm going to get fucking real with you, man. I'm going to drop some Judeo-Christian ethic knowledge on you. Have you ever read the book of Job? Have you ever read the book of Job? What happens in the book of Job? The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. All right. So fucking, I'm sorry, but like, I just cannot, I'm not religious at all. If anything, the recent events the past few years have made me like, not anti-religious, but like completely no role of a religion in my life. However, I refuse to objectify and blame a group of people that do not know me and have nothing to do with me for anything that I don't like about my own life.
Right. Embrace being a mediocre white guy. It's fine. I've always been a mediocre white guy my entire life. When I graduated high school and I had a really shitty GPA and I joined the army, my parents were like, "Yeah, you fucked off during high school, and that's why you are where you are right now. You can go to state school if you want. If you wanted to go to college, I wanted to join the army instead." But my parents were never like, "Oh, the reason why you didn't get to."
It's unfair. It's reverse racism.
Right. My parents did recognize that, like, maybe I didn't work hard in school, but I did work hard at other things. Like, I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed my friends. I did a lot of cool stuff. And my parents have always been super supportive of me. When I said, I want to be a writer when I grow up, they said, great, that's fine. Write the next great American novel. Go for it. So they were always supportive, but they were never like, the reason why you haven't done this is because of a black lesbian is the reason why you're not able to do what you want. And it's like, no, I know that I am where I am because of my decisions. Some of them good, some of them bad. A lot of bad, but a lot of bad that I learned from. And you become a better person from that. And I think that a lot of these people have just been constantly told, you remember our age, the whole like, oh, everybody gets a trophy, but that's like apparently the entire Republican MO at this point is that like you haven't been handed the trophy.
Also, like, everybody gets a trophy was kind of more boomer parents being annoying than it was millennial children.
Yeah.
But I think that, it was interesting because one of the things that I can recall this when I was younger for a couple of reasons. I think number one, my parents did at one point listen to like Rush Limbaugh. And I think that like you find that that mentality, kind of reactionary mentality in America is to always find the kind of dumbest, most cynical and kind of like most smugly reductive and sort of self-confirming interpretation of events. And it's like, when someone devotes their life to like trying to work with rehabilitating, parolees and like help reduce recidivism and like generally try to like, and then, help, they work in this field of kind of like criminal justice and like rehabilitation. Invariably, it's sad these things will happen where someone winds up being killed by one of their clients, one of the people that they're working with, and everybody wants to jump up and be like, ha ha, that's what you fucking get for being a bleeding hard ass lib. This happened in Britain, and it was really sad because a guy who was an alumnus of the program came to the graduation of the same program and killed one of the former counselors. And the guy he killed, his dad was like, I know that how this country is, but I really, really do not want people to use his death to objectify things and to use it as a stick to beat immigrants and Muslims and people who are, parolees, people who are offended, who have been in prison for violent crimes. Like, my son believed in this and devoted his life to this. Like, I'm horrified and I'm heartbroken, but like, I have to honor his convictions. But no matter how much this guy is saying this very, very humble, very, very earnest thing, all the British media was just like, ha ha ha, see, this is why we have to deport them all. And like that mentality, that is like Rush Limbaugh before he took so much fucking Percocet he died. That was the MO. That was him in like quintessence. If you got him to like the Coca-Cola syrup they put in the gas station fucking soda machine, that's Rush Limbaugh in quintessence. And I remember that. And then like when their sort of, the target cursor kind of drifted towards gay people, the cruelty, the meanness, the AIDS jokes, all this shit, it was really all about, I mean, like somebody like I don't know if you ever listened to Michael Savage, but that guy was, I mean, he would just go on these insane fucking nonsense. That dude was fucking psycho. Even man.
Yeah. He was on sometimes the late night of the talk radio, and I listened to some conservative radio when I was a teenager and a little bit into my 20s, and they all, like, I'm not going to defend anything that was said because like I'm sure it was all terrible, but like they all completely lost their mind in 2007 when Obama won. But Michael Savage was always there. Michael Savage was always the like insane the on-air boomer, the guy who was screaming about like, all the music today is terrible and we should listen to nothing but shit from the 1960s.
Also, he would, every time you get him talking about gays, it would always immediately be like bestiality and pedophilia, like nonstop. And I'm sure like, brother, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? But like, that was his thing. Like, you could turn on Michael Savage and you would think that you had just gotten a really clear signal from a pirate radio station where someone is just having a fucking schizophrenic episode and ranting about like, men fucking dogs and getting married to the dogs they're fucking in church, like level of thing. Like, that's how he was. And that was one facet of conservative radio. But I think this self-victimizing tendency and this kind of like objectify and essentialize your enemies or your perceived enemies, go after the targets that are like, the ones that you feel like you can make the meanest, funniest joke out of. I feel like that's always been there. It's just the internet has facilitated it and the targets are different. I think it's just really sad because I can remember this in, the way that people reacted when Vermont allowed civil unions. They were the first state to allow anything even proximate to gay marriage. And then obviously you had Lawrence v. Texas in 2003 because before 2003, technically speaking, gay sex was illegal in some states in America.
Illegal in the Army too.
Oh yeah, it was illegal in the Army until 2011. But in basically 1986, there was a case called Bowers v. Hardwick, and they basically affirmed the right for states to basically have sodomy laws. And so like if they caught you in the act of having gay sex, like that was a criminal infraction and you could be punished for it. And they took this to the Supreme Court. And so in 2003, finally, it became legal to have gay sex in America.
Like, I can do whatever I want with my own butt. Thank you, Texas.
What's interesting is that like France never had a law against being gay because they sort of like, it was the Napoleonic codes and they're just sort of like, I mean, I guess technically speaking before Napoleon, like before the revolution and stuff, I realized the French Revolution and Napoleon are two different things, but basically before, during the sort of ancien regime, I don't know. I know that like if you go back in history and stuff, like there's obviously a period of time when like, you get burned at the stake and eviscerated for being gay in France and elsewhere. But like by the 18th century, it seems like if you were gay in England, you could just move to France because apparently like it was cool there. Like they didn't really, I can't imagine that it was like, fucking absolutely like tolerant paradise. But like if your neighbors heard you fucking a dude through the wall or whatever, if they called the cops, they weren't going to, burn you at the stake.
Right.
Whereas in England, they would do something. They'd, hang you at Tiber and put you on a boat in the middle of the ocean and leave you like that. So it's just interesting because it's like, they basically never banned it in the first place.
You also got to understand sodomy laws means putting your penis inside of anything that's not a vagina. So even a blowjob's illegal.
Yeah, oral sex would be illegal. Basically, I mean, you can go down the road.
All the fun sex. Just not even
I mean,
allowed.
it's one of those things where it's like there are funny laws on the books in America. Like I can't remember if it was in Missouri was the one that had the law that like if you could like using obscenity in front of a child under 10 or something was like a penalty in this county. And some dude like fucked up the tow hitch on his boat and was just like, you motherfucking piece of shit. And someone got mad because her kid could hear and called the cops and he actually got charged. Like that to me
that sounds like Missouri.
Sounds like Missouri. Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is that I bring up the stuff about talk radio because I feel like this recent stuff is not new rhetorically, but it's a
new medium.
It's a new medium and it feels more pervasive. And I think there's a generational split because a lot of parents of particularly boys don't engage with it in the same way and may not be aware of what's being said and may not be aware of how quickly you will start being fed right wing and not even like establishment conservative right wing, but like objectively reactionary stuff. And I made this joke online because Cynthia was telling me about having read some articles about surveys of like the older side of Gen Alpha and then like young Gen Z kids. So like kids who are sort of just out of, I mean, I think in Gen Alpha side, like they would be just out of high school or still in high school. And then it's like, obviously people who've just graduated or would be like, you know, post high school if they were in college or early college age. And it was like, they were both a lot more openly anything but heterosexual, like not a huge amount, but far higher proportion admitted to being bi or to calling themselves queer, being gay, being pansexual, being asexual, than being trans, obviously too. But like in terms of sexual orientation, not gender identity, a much higher percentage than previous generations. But also there's a huge gender split and males are far more right-wing than the male cohorts other than Gen X. And then also it's a massive split between women, between the women in the group in the cohort and the men in the cohort as surveyed. And it's like, so wait, they're way gayer and they're way more right wing and racist.
Yeah, it's weird.
Like, so basically America, the youth of America are just going to become Spanish. They're going to be like the world's most homoerotic and also homophobic people who are racist. Like the gay cops who are homophobic and racist. Spain. Spain's a wonderful country. I love Spain. I've met lots of Spanish. If there's a European group of people who always correspond to my negative stereotypes, it's not the Spanish, it's the Italians.
Always the Italians.
However, I mean, twice now I've had Italians just say wild Italian shit out of nowhere to me. Like a lady's being like, your daughter's got a cough, you need to warm up some olive oil and rub it all over like fucking Vicks vapor rub. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not sauteing my baby.
Why don't you go lose another world war, bro?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so basically what I'm saying though is that this tendency, I think it's the kind of a cause for, well, it's kind of cause for not a lot of hope, but in the sense that like you see these things happening. What's interesting to me is this wasn't always the case everywhere, like recently in the last decade. But there are places in the world where it was, and people were commenting about these polls where you'd be like, wait, all of the massive majority of people surveyed in the 18 to 24 bracket are right wing. And the two countries where that was the case absolutely in polling, you know, prior to, let's say 2020 was there were Poland and Israel. If you know anything about the politics of those countries, that won't surprise you. But I personally think, if I had to hazard a guess, outside of the America shit that we've been talking about, just like the sort of generational tendencies, I think that there's a lot of really bad stuff online. And a lot of, if you think about who these kids are, if you're looking at, you know, the world's gayest and most racist 18 to 23 year olds, how old were they during COVID, during the lockdowns?
Oh, yeah. Like, look, my
they were 13 to 18 by my count that I've just done.
My nephew, who is 22, and his parents have both just been like, I don't know, the kids, there's an entire generation that didn't fuck in high school, and that's a problem, because if you touch somebody, grandma might die.
I don't really think it's got to be just that though. I mean, I do think there's something interesting that like it does feel, I don't really engage with it that much. I have seen the surveys, but I mean, I have noticed a little bit more of what I would describe as like when you encounter commentary from people online about media, and it's like a lot of the tells of the way that they're typing and writing, communicating, texting, the emojis they're using and shit extremely rings like it's someone who's in like the young Zoomer to maybe the oldest Gen Alpha kind of vibe. Like it's people who might still be like teenagers, might still, you know, be under 18 but are barely, versus like people who are just barely over it. Like that age cohort, when you encounter them online, I do feel like I see a lot of stuff that's kind of like basically treats any manifestation of sex or sexual desire and entertainment as like abuse and as pornography. That's kind of weird to see. I mean, like, I guess attitudes change, but I've never seen it swing so hard in the other direction when it wasn't like an objectively like, you know, Christian summer camp kind of thing.
I was talking to my wife about this, about how like the current generations that are like teenagers and in their early 20s, they had the same access that we did to the things that we like, right? Nicotine, alcohol, pornography. We had all of that, but it was very like, you know, you found a box of porn in the woods, or you could download like badly photoshopped pictures of Kathy Ireland. You could drink MD 2020. You could smoke the worst weed in the entire world, and you get a pack of cigarettes for like $2.50. And like all those things still exist, but now it's like hyper porn with like women stuck in a chair or a dryer for some reason. It's, you know, these vapes that you can get anywhere that taste like bubble gum. It's you know, even caffeine, like just constantly downing white monsters instead of drinking coffee like a normal person.
I mean, I remember smoking actual good British Columbia weed, or what was called British Columbia weed, like Canadian weed, when I was in high school, and like I straight up thought I had like fucking, it was like closed eye hallucinations.
Oh God, yeah.
Like it was so strong. Now that's like beer they sell in Utah compared to like the dab rig shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can only imagine being 17, 18 and hitting that, and like what kind of effect that would have.
If I took one of my vapes back to me at the age of 16, I probably would have died. It's much like giving the Dorito to a medieval peasant kind of thing, you know? Just like the body is not ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, the level of just sort of the access to things, and it's easier to get, it's easier to have it in a more consistent and also like more concentrated way.
Yeah.
Like if you've got like kids, you know, kids have access to the internet typically, and porn is very easy to find if they want it,
and all kinds of porn too, like just the, like whatever your little perverted heart desires, you can find it.
Well, I mean, I remember this being kind of interesting. Just one time, this woman followed me on Instagram, and I was like, I don't recognize this person. I actually have a locked account, so she requested to follow me, and I was like, who is this? And I was like, I think I might know this person. Is this somebody I remember from New York? So I accepted the follow, and then I looked and I realized all the dudes that she was following were photos of guys who looked like they were kind of middle-aged, and their avatars were selfies. Mm-hmm. And typically they were all like driver's seat, ball cap, yelling about libs. In my case, it was a photo I'd taken of me in sunglasses on like a hot day outside in London, but you know.
That's what they've got a image recognition to see anybody outside wearing sunglasses doing a selfie.
And I was like, well, who the fuck, like, what is this like pattern recognition here? What is going on? And I looked at some of the open, like unlocked accounts of people that she was following, these random dudes. And they were guys older than me, probably 50s and such, maybe late 40s. And they were all, the only people they followed were OnlyFans creators. And they were all like 18, 19, 20 years old. And like, I'm not going to say there's anything like objectively wrong with that. It's all voluntary. But like the thought crossed my mind that, I mean, it's legal. It's whatever the fuck. Like I think that if I would be, when I was in ultra twink mode, when I was 19, 20 years old, if I'd been able to seek, you know, financial compensation by doing videos of myself and shit, like being naked or whatever, I probably would have. But if I had also received the torrent of like obsessive stalking, following, weird invasive shit that comes with this for some people, I think I would be very frustrated if later in life, now, I was still having people trying to find me and shit because of that. And that's my big concern about it, is that like, I don't think it's morally wrong if people want to do it. I mean, it's certainly, in the grand scheme of things, with OnlyFans big fucking problems notwithstanding, is probably less exploitative than like the old route, which was like, you know, doing it for a porn site that pays you nothing.
Right, doing back pay. Look, as people who make a lot of money off of Patreon, you and I, we understand the like, I'll give you $5. You give me $5 a month, and I'll give you something. You know, whether it be a podcast or an extra up close shot of my butthole, one or the other. If you're giving me $5, I get that, and like you said, I do like appreciate OnlyFans in that respect, that it does kind of add a level of, you know, removing any kind of abusive part of it. Now, I'm not going to say there's nobody abused, obviously, but like,
sure, yeah.
But I do think that like, if you are a man or a woman and you're okay with showing off your body and you want to do something like that, that you can do that and you can make money off of it. And I think that that's a great way, if that's something that you're comfortable.
If you want to do it, I mean, I guess it's the thing for me is more along the lines of what I thought about that was that as far as it affects young people, it's kind of more of an indication of just like how it's kind of banal. Like it's everywhere. Like you could find stuff like OnlyFans, which is not all of it is like explicitly pornographic, but like it's adult content.
I've definitely thought about putting our podcast on OnlyFans.
That would be very funny, but yeah, it somehow tells me that like, yeah, I don't want us to become the podcast equivalent of like the truck stop restaurants. It's like the, you know, bare ass nude diner or whatever.
We're not going to change a single thing. I just put the, you know, people on Only. Here's the thing. My thought process on this is that, you know, who do we mostly attract listening to our podcast?
Middle-aged people slightly like let's say, I think we have had some fans who are on the younger side, like early 20s, but in general, it tends to be people at the youngest, like in their late 20s and then all the way up through quite a bit older than us. And particularly, I think with the long-suffering veterans who just like our show, even though we don't really talk about the military anymore, that tends to skew older too.
Right. So, and you know, what is the largest possible fan base that's on OnlyFans? It's going to be a lot of guys, probably in their late 20s, early 30s, up to their 40s, 50s, and 60s. I mean, they're already there. Might as well give us $5 there too for our fantastic podcast content. You know, all of our that would be all of our great bonus episodes. You know, after you get done cranking off, what do you like? Maybe just like, you know, you get that.
I want to hear about gardening and good recipes that this guy in Missouri and this guy in Switzerland have done.
After you
I kind of want them to post feet.
Yeah, after you bust, you know, you get done looking at some feet and you have that like, well, while I'm here, I might as well go listen to this podcast about Deadliest Warrior.
I mean, I think the thing for me is more that I'm trying to like react to your argument there about the kind of how ubiquitous and how like concentrated the stuff is. I do think that's, yeah, it feels like it's a world with a different dynamic. I mean, in my experience, kids aren't like, when they get into a lot of this stuff, like the MLM stuff and the Manosphere stuff and all these things like the gambling and the Andrew Tate and worse and shit. A lot of times, like, it's not even the ideological stuff from what I can tell. It seems to be more along the lines of like, here are guys who are sort of like, I'm successful, I'm self-employed, I make money, I'll show you how. Mm-hmm. And along with it comes all this baggage and a lot of these just like really, really regressive and generally just hateful
First off,
ideas.
You have to hate women to be successful.
Well, that's the thing is like, I don't hate women. So fuck, I guess I can't be part of your audience. And I don't think that women, like, I don't think that the secret to being emotionally, they only define successful as sexually successful, which like isn't the point. I mean, like, it's a point, but it's not the end all be all of life. Of course, these guys also argue that like the most important thing in life is like to pass on your genetic material. There's a strain of them that does this, which like, well, that's just so fucking weird. But I mean, what I'm saying though is that like, I don't think that lying to women or fooling women or tricking women is somehow the end all secret to like that. Like that's the only approach to that will grant someone. I mean, I just find it so funny because this disconnect where like once again the same tendency as before of like the self bitchification, I guess. The idea of making yourself so abject that you are constantly being oppressed by these like dark forces that want to like, you know, keep you down and emasculate you and keep you from, you know, the kind of incel shit. It's like, I find it very funny because these guys go on these tangents and develop like more and more abstruse theories of like, oh, this percentage of women is into this percentage of men, or like fucking like pickup artist stuff, but like given the kind of ring of, I don't know, some kind of weird mysticism, like it gets weirder and weirder as you go. And I've only scratched the surface like in passing. And then every now and again, you'll also see a thread where someone will be like, a guy will be like, listen, you know, I'm a gay man and I have a lot of straight women friends. And when straight men, like when they talk about like either what bothers them about their partners or what they want in a partner, like it literally comes down to shower every day, get clothes that fit, get a haircut at least once a month, brush your teeth every day, trim your nails once a week. If you're not in shape, find a sport, activity, something exercise wise, maybe just going to the gym 3 times a week and just do it consistently. Like it might take 6 months to get in shape. It might take 3 years. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. You just don't want to like, you want to do something that makes you seem active and more or less vigorous and like be clean, smell decent, like smell neutral at worst. Like you don't have to smell great, but you have to smell neutral. You can't smell bad. And when you talk to women, talk to them in a way where you are, you know, responding to what they're saying with both like obvious reflection of like that you are listening, and then ask them questions that give them a chance to talk more about themselves.
Yeah.
And it was like thousands and thousands of women either quote tweeting or replying like, this is so hot, I'm already in love with this guy, if a guy can do all this, he'd be the hottest guy. And then it's like, so which of these do you believe? Which of these do you believe? Because listen, man, I've always been a little bit cagey, a little bit fucking strung tight. One of my biggest funny self-knowledge moments is to come to realize much later in life, after meeting people after years and talking to them and hearing these stories, how many missed opportunities there were, because I had a pretty negative self-image, but also like was just kind of in my own head so much. I didn't realize how many opportunities I had where girls were giving me signs, guys were giving me signs that they were into me, and I just completely left it on the fucking table. And that was because of a lack of self-confidence, but also just kind of, I wasn't paying enough attention to them. I was just talking about what I wanted to talk about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In some cases I could tell, but I was like, this is not going to be a fucking good idea for a million reasons.
Sure.
But in a lot of other cases, and it's not like I'm like, oh, I have some grand regret, you know, like I am very happily married married and I love my wife and I think we're really well matched. But like, I spent a lot of time alone and I realized now, like, yeah, that didn't necessarily have to be the case, but I couldn't get out of my own way.
One of my favorite stories that you told me, I remember you telling me that you felt guilty about having sex with a woman because, while she was drunk, when she was the one that showed up at your door, knocking on the door with the bottle of Jack Daniels in hand and said, "Here, drink this." And then you're like, you felt guilty. I'm like, she knew exactly what she was doing, buddy.
Well, no, our first date, she brought an overnight bag.
Yeah.
And then I was like, is this girl serious? Because like I was like, what in the fuck are you? And so I was kind of into this other girl at the time, and I was like, man, this is gonna be so mean. I am so gonna just drop her off at her apartment and not do this. And like by doing that, I set up a challenge, of course, and I wasn't even doing it intentionally. And then it did happen, and yes, that all happened. But also, I mean, like, I'm sorry, dude. This is one of those things where I am very cognizant, and I try to be conscious of not talking about any kind of things in my past, like call it romantic life, that are going to be like too specifically revelatory of which person it is, or too personal, or too like bro-y to the point of it's kind of becoming like Tucker Max shit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You remember that name forgotten, effaced by sand, like fucking like the Ozymandias statue. But we all remember Tucker Max and his influence.
He's really into knife fighting now.
Go figure, man.
He's really into knives.
You gotta find a weird thing that's fungible to be into, like obsessively online now.
I guess it's better than guns, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
it's weirder, but it's better.
I mean, if I was gonna be really into knives, I would be really into like the insanely like diversified specialty cooking and like chef's blades they make in Japan,
right?
Where they're like, oh no, you can't cut this radish with that kind of vegetable cleaver. You have to use a different one, and they're all made by like fucking samurais like that. I love that stuff. But
yeah, he's not even into cool like fantasy knives. It's just into like, these are combat knives. Like, that's how you die, is you get into a knife fight.
My friend in Korea once saw a dude who had painted swastikas and Hitler shit all over. It was a Korean guy who painted Hitler stuff and like obvious Nazi shit all over his bike. So he kicked the bike over as he was walking by, and the dude saw it and came out of the bar and chased him. But as he described it, he was being chased with a fantasy future axe. And they called the cops, and the cops arrested or detained my friend, and they were like, he was like, yeah, the guy, I saw his bike and it had Nazi shit, so I kicked it. What the fuck you want to do? He attacked me with an axe. And the guy's like, they're like, no, we didn't. And my friend was like, he couldn't find the words and his Korean wasn't very good. So he just Googled fantasy future axe, and it was the first thing that came up, and he just showed the picture to the cops. And they wound up letting them both go. Side note, that's my fun knife story, I guess. But I don't want to talk about like my past relationship stuff to something but I also realized too that if anything that we said was like gonna potentially lead people out of the path of like that self-victimization and this kind of like weird, uniformly negative, kind of hostile, dismissive view of women, then I don't know, like I'll tell something and just try to make the point being I'm a lot better about like being open emotionally and sharing than I was when I was younger. Some of that's just how I grew up, and some of it's also that like I think real emotional stuff kind of made me uncomfortable in a lot of cases. And I think getting deployed and experiencing like real grief and realizing that like there's a lot worse things than talking about your emotions. Mm-hmm. They are dying, or people you care about dying and you didn't have a chance to tell them things that you wish you could have told them, or people not being, and you care about, not being able to talk about their feelings and then killing themselves, or intentionally or accidentally with sleeping pills, alcohol, DUIs, crashing their car, guns, doing weapons maintenance while they're blackout and shooting themselves. All these things that happen, like you realize, emotions aren't, being emotionally vulnerable or emotionally open isn't the scariest and certainly not the worst thing on earth. It's actually a really good thing. It makes you feel better. It's like exercise, the hippies were right. And I guess the story that you mentioned about the girl buying the bottle of whiskey and stuff is that like I've had probably an abnormally high number of situations where like there was some kind of attraction between me and a girl, and then like when we did finally wind up having sex, like she wound up crying, and it's happened like 3 times, and I think that's 3 times more than it happens to most people. And it's not because it's sometimes sex can be like really, really emotionally overwhelming, and that kind of thing can't happen to anybody. Don't get me wrong. It was more sort of like I'm crying because I'm so conflicted, or like I'm crying because I know that like I'm now admitting my feelings for you, but I know you're emotionally unavailable, so on and so forth. So in a way, it's like if I shy away from stories like that, it's more to do with the fact that like in retrospect, that's not really who I am anymore, and frankly, like I was very emotionally unavailable. Yeah. I guess in some ways I didn't realize I was, oh man, I don't want to sound dismissive. I was basically catnip for the kind of person who really wants to have a heartbreak story in their life. Like I have set on breaking my own heart, and I'm going to find the person who's going to help me do that. And they're like, oh, who's that redheaded guy? Yeah, that's my life story.
He looks cute. Yeah,
he looks cute, like he wants to kill himself. Like he really wants, like, well, not he doesn't kill himself. He looks like he's got a death drive and he doesn't care if he lives or dies. That's why I like Gone Baby Gone, because I swear to God, fucking problematic Casey Affleck's character has that like Boston death drive of like, you gonna kill me and make my day better? Like that, I know that feeling because that's how I was before I learned to talk about my emotions.
Hey, I'll do you one better. At least 2 women that I've slept with, I have been with only women since me. So, you know.
It's because you're so into gardening that you taught them that there was they needed their next partner to be a gardener, and they found it.
They found the lesbian that they need to properly till their soil, I guess. You know what? No hate, because when I was 24, the gal I was dating broke up with me for another woman, and they're still together. So, you know, I'm not gonna. I do have this thing where like a lot of times women will break up with me, or they will stop dating me or something, and then they are with the person they are for the rest of their life. This has happened multiple times. So like I have a lot of like, you know, like, oh, this is a nice story. I'm glad I was the last before the last, I guess. I mean,
I've been the person who was sort of broken up with because the person met the person they wound up marrying, and I've also broken up with someone because I met the person that I married.
Sure.
In the case where I was the person who made the decision, like it wasn't really like, I mean, we'd been together for 2 years, but so much of it had been long distance, and like it was obvious the relationship wasn't like, it was, we stayed friends, and we actually like are still very close friends. Like we talk regularly. Like I've helped her with some stuff like academic proposals because she's Korean, but she's studying in America doing a PhD. Like we're great friends. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's fine. I don't feel weird about that. But like, I guess I try not to talk about, because this is weird. Like there's this notion of like, okay, well, if we talk about this in a way that maybe it could become a thing where I don't have any belief that this is that anything we talked about in this sort of like positive male role model stuff in public is going to be reaching the target audience, because like, let's be honest, the people who seem to be showing the most problematic tendencies or being radicalized are quite young, and nothing about this show, you and me, is going to be of interest to a large group of young men, let's say, you know, that almost done with high school to like end of college age cohort that seems to be like the most massively radicalized right now about this like manosphere stuff. But I do hope that maybe, you know, there's also a lot of really salty and bitter and cynical, just hater ass people of our generational cohort, and maybe some people can listen to what we're saying, specifically because I'm saying men would listen to us and potentially see that there's another way. To use a really vulgar comparison, I suppose. Do you remember in Reservoir Dogs, when it was Reservoir Dogs, wasn't it, where he offers his interpretation of Top Gun, that Iceman is being like, no, you got to be cool like us and be gay. Like we're jacked and we're happy and we're you know, like we're friends, we're gay. And Maverick's is like, he's unwilling to admit his homosexuality. It's like, and so he's like threatened by like the big, like Val Kilmer, rest in peace, the big jacked gay dudes. And he's like, come with us and be gay like us. And that's like the metaphor behind it. It's Quentin Tarantino.
I do not remember that in Reservoir Dogs, but
if it's not Reservoir Dogs, there's another Quentin Tarantino movie where, because it's
been a minute since I've seen it. So,
it's
you know.
So obviously a Tarantino thing for him to be like, here's a bit in a movie of mine about another movie where a guy is venturing his theory of a movie that's like funny, but also a bit like a little bit homophobic and like a little bit transgressive, or at least like countercurrent. But I guess that's the joke. Like maybe that's us. Maybe we're like, hey, look at us. We're 2 married guys, happily married, monogamous. We've got kids. We have our interests. We don't really give a fuck. Like when people try to Manosphere shit on us to put us down, we just think it's funny. Like I had to explain to my mom what ultra cucked shit lip meant. Like that kind of thing. Like maybe we can be the burning bush, to use our religious metaphors again, and you can see us and be like, wait, I don't have to be a chud, I don't have to be a hater, I don't have to hate myself, I don't have to self-victimize. I don't know, I'm probably ascribing way too much power to us, but I'm just saying, like,
I think we're pretty great, so you know,
I got my own problems. We've got our own problems, we got our own frustrations, things about ourselves we don't like, things we wish we could do better, patterns we're trying to escape. I fully admit that. But I'm gonna be real with you and to the audience. I used to have a problem not drinking nonstop, but not being able to temper the amount of alcohol I drank when I drank. And so I didn't necessarily drink every night, but when I drank socially, which in college was a lot, and obviously in the army was quite often, I would always drink too much. I mean, I wouldn't, if I had to drive home or whatever, I never drove drunk, but I would often wind up being the one person who actually took the person up on the offer of like, can I sleep on your couch?
Sure.
Because I got fucking blackout. That happened a lot. It had this like recursive effect on me because like I hated it. I didn't like it about myself. I had a lot of anxiety that would come from it because a hangover anxiety got worse and worse. And with, life stress events, it got worse. And it felt like a thing where I was always saying to myself, like, I never felt like I was in good enough shape and I didn't like the way I looked. And I always was like embarrassed by my inability to control myself with alcohol. And like, it was a thing that it was like, I acknowledge their problems and yet I keep doing them over and over again. I met my wife. One time I went out with my friend and got blackout and it caused some serious friction in our relationship and she explained why. And I realized two things. Number one, she didn't yell at me. She just explained that like it hurt her feelings mostly because she was worried about me and because I was so gone when I came home that I just didn't even acknowledge she was there. Mm-hmm. And I had to think about it a lot. And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed by, I just realized like I'm too old for this shit. I was like almost 30, I think, or I was 31, something like that. I must have been, yeah. And it's not that I never drank a lot ever again. I mean, but I never had a moment like that ever again.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, oh, you're going to have hit your rock bottom. It's more that like I found myself in a relationship with someone for the first time in my entire life who found ways to reinforce positive behaviors positively and like find a way to like look for an obvious sort of approach to kind of nudge away from negative behaviors. And like, it's made all the difference in the world for me personally.
Yeah.
So now I'm not saying, okay, the solution is you have to, marrying someone will solve your problems. Externalize all your problems and project your own salvation on another person. Make it their responsibility. I'm not saying that. What I am saying though is that for better or worse, my wife and I, if you had told me when I was 23 or 26 to describe our interests, describe her convictions, her background, her beliefs, that doesn't sound like someone who would probably, that I would have thought that I would have wound up with. And I would not have sounded in any way like a person to her that she would have wound up with. But she told me that in some conversations she had where it typically always went one way with white dudes she knew, my opinions actually kind of surprised her. Mm-hmm. And I think that being willing to just try to see stuff from other people's perspectives and not look at partnering with someone or finding a date or a spouse or a partner, whatever, as like a competition, not denigrating it, but just like trying to see stuff from other people's perspective. That's the reason I was able to get with a woman like my wife. Mm-hmm. It's not because I had a fucking 12 pack. It's not because I was fucking like I was driving like, a Lambo made out of Ducatis. It's not like I had any of that, all the shit that people say. Like I wasn't in that good a shape. I had just recently quit smoking, which would have been a deal breaker for her. I drank too much. I was obviously in a bad place in terms of like life stress and shit. But you know what? Like something connected. And I think that like a lot of people have a lot of negative things they don't like about themselves and they feel unhappy in their lives. And like some problems can't be solved. And we live in a fucked up kind of social economic system. But true honesty, Francis, when I think back to some of the stuff that I would have said to be kind of like provocative when I was like 18 to 23, I don't know if I would have fallen for this shit, like the Manosphere stuff. I think that ideologically, I probably would have like thought it was funny to trigger people with it, to use the anachronistic phrase. I think them being really homophobic probably would have turned me off just because I knew I was bisexual, even if I wasn't really out about it. But I would not like to see that version of myself that wound up there. No, I really would not.
I'm the same. Like, let me give you my wife's story because my wife listens to this podcast. So, I got to give you my wife's story too, because I have something very similar. When my wife and I got together after I got back from my last deployment to Iraq, she was also a big drinker, but she and I were both drinking because we were, she had problems with like, she's not comfortable going out, right? But she always wanted to go out because all her friends like, we're going out, we're going to go see this band or whatever. And it would always turn into like, to be comfortable with this or to feel like I fit in, I have to get blackout drunk with everybody else. And like when she and I started to kind of comfortably nest with one another, she was giving that realization of like, I don't need to be doing this. It's incredibly stupid. And my wife does not. She has a drink maybe once or twice a year. And I still have like my birthday. I recently had my birthday, turned 42. I had one beer and I stayed up too late. And by too late, that means 11:30. And like, that's just where I'm at now as a person in my middle age. But I got here because the same thing. I would come home blackout drunk, or I'd just get drunk on the couch. And my wife, Beth, would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to, not only why are you doing this to yourself, but why are you doing this to me? This is not something that I'm looking for in a relationship if you're just going to be doing this. And a big part of it is that willingness to say, okay, I recognize that this relationship is more important than the stupid shit that I'm doing, and I'm going to make an effort to stop it. And this, of course, does not mean that I'm in any ways perfect. I know I pissed her off by being an asshole the other day too. Like, it still happens, but like, I'm not being a major, I'm not coming home home drunk as shit. I'm not being abusive. I'm not doing all of these things. And that's because I had somebody who I wanted to change for. And also weed became legal in Missouri. And it's just, I would rather hit my vape, 2 or 3 times than, drink a 6-pack of beer. It's going to be better for my body the next day if I do that. And, it's just that willingness to say like, okay, now I am comfortable with who I am. And of course, there's always things that I want to change. I wish I could work out more. I wish I could do X, Y, and Z, but I'm comfortable with who I am, the opinions that I have, the place where I'm at now in my career and this podcast and everything else. I think it's all going great, but I would not be here without my wife grabbing me by the ear and being like, what the fuck are you doing? Mm-hmm. And I never had anybody else who did that. Like I never dated anybody. And to be fair, we got together when I was in my 20s. So the women that I was dating before this, when I was 25 and younger, also had their own, problems and issues and everything. I know that they're all, in better places now. But, like you said, that person between the ages of, for me, it was probably 18 to 25. Like I had a lot of fun during that time, but I recognized that I was a depressed, drunk asshole too. And that is not going to give you a clear path forward. And I was like at that time, like the mid-aughts and everything, the late aughts, the pickup artist thing was really big. And like, I did not know too much about it. I just thought it was hey guys, here's a way that you can like, maybe learn how to date. And I was like, I've just been in Iraq for a while. And yeah, I'm talking to this girl, but maybe I want to date around a bit. And I spent like, maybe about a month in the checking out the subreddit and was like, these people are fucking disgusting and I don't want anything to do with them. And I had I went back to my revelation that I tell everybody, that I tell every young man who's just like, how do I, get with women? And the answer is you have to stop looking at every interaction you have with a woman as how can I fuck this woman? It's a person. Talk to them. If they're not interesting as a person, then why are you trying? Like, I don't know what you're doing then. And I know that at 40 that it's different, but like, I'm not going to talk to somebody. I'm not going to try to build a relationship with somebody if I'm not able to talk to them, if they're not able to talk to me. That's just useless. And like, if you, like you said, wash your ass, trim your toenails, be nice, be interested in the things that they have to say, ask questions so that they can do all basic things, all like the most basic ass shit that you can do if you respect another person, just like even as a person, and not just like that's a person I want to fuck, and not instead of a person I want to have some kind of relationship with, even if it's going to be a one-night stand, try to have a little bit of
a one-night stand can always wind up in a fucking unplanned pregnancy that you have a kid and then that person's in your life. So maybe if you're going to hook up with someone randomly, hopefully it's someone you like talking to. That's all I can say.
Exactly.
Never happened. I'm not saying it happened to me, but like I know people it's happened to, you know what I mean? And so it's like, just saying. And that's not to... I think the thing for me is that I'll give you a little anecdote here real fast before we run. Knew a guy years ago. He was in a bad state mentally. He was same age as me. He was about 23 years old and he looked about 40. Not even because of like balding, which is typically the first thing that makes dudes look old when they're young, but rather he just was a haggard, skinny guy and smoker and just did not. And he was very unhappy. He was very depressed as a army officer, junior army officer. He wound up getting a DUI because he was just like sad guy drinking and tried to drive back on post, which is a huge deal when you're an officer. And then he tried to commit suicide and he was in psych ward for a while. He got out and I think he did get taken on the deployment, but obviously he had a GOMAR, a general officer memorandum of administrative reprimand. So he was never going to promote. And I don't think they let him promote to captain. He got forcibly separated at 4 years, but like, it wasn't other than honorable, but like he was like not retained. But right before he got out, I saw him again and he looked very different, very, very different. And he just seemed happier. And I was like, what's up, man? Like, how's it going? And he was getting married. And he's like, yeah, man, like I couldn't drive on post. I literally had to ride the bus everywhere. And I saw a flyer at a bus stop for like a fucking like vegetarian. I was interested in vegetarianism. And I went to this like, sort of vegetarian group that did like gardening and shit in Anchorage. And like, I met a girl and we really liked talking to each other and we fell in love. Now, how did my depressed friend who looked 40 when he was 20 and was going through it in a really bad way in a town where men outnumber women significantly and the army casts the pall of like women stay away, like that's a problem. And yet he meets a girl and they have a wonderful, as I could tell, it was working out great. He went to do something that he was interested in. He met someone and they shared an common interest, and they talked about it and themselves and each other. And it wasn't like, let's go to a bar and I'm going to convince you to fuck me. You know what I mean? He was like, I'm not going to drink ever again because clearly I have a drinking problem and I need to be sober. And that was fine with her because she wasn't exactly into you. She wasn't at the vegetarian gardening group to fucking meet dudes to go get blackout with. And
she can go to the NCO club.
She can go to anywhere in Anchorage, walk on on a fucking street corner, dude. I had a native Alaskan girl call me an F slur because I wouldn't get off my bike in the middle of a bike ride while I was riding in exercise clothes to drink a fucking like a 2-liter bottle of grape soda and a bottle of vodka. She's like, you want to drink with me? And I was like, I'm literally working. She's like, what are you, a fucking and I was just like, no, I just don't want to. You're obviously about to pass out. Like, that's Anchorage, Alaska. So what I'm saying is, this guy managed with all the things that like this weird kind of occult sort of view of the world and human relationships and relationships between men and women. It's like, what do you want to believe? That maybe this approach of just sort of like being earnest and genuine in your interests and doing things and not just being on the computer all day is how you meet a partner? And or do you believe that you want to like go down the sort of like Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug, a guide to dating, where you think that like you can't get a date because like Globo Homo and George Soros and like Rocco's Basilisk, the AI that's so powerful you get scared of it. You know, you draw a cartoon dragon and it makes you cry, that they're stopping girls from liking you. Mm-hmm. Which of these sounds more plausible, and which of these sounds like it's got an out that's going to lead you to potentially meeting a person that you want to have, who wants to have a relationship with you?
Yeah, it turns out women don't like assholes for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, women also, I think, I don't want to generalize, but I do think that like people, women, men, non-binary people are vulnerable to being manipulated. And I think that a lot of the kind of like where the pickup artist shit maybe lands in terms of like being successful in the same vein as a lot of this stuff is by telling guys to deliberately be unresponsive and not seem eager in a way. And like in some cases, it certainly makes the person determine whether or not they actually are interested in you. And so the people who do text back after you ignore them might be people who are just interested in gender. You shouldn't just be mean to them and manipulate them. But I'm saying that like there is also the truth that sometimes people respond to that, and in some ways it's not, I don't know, in some ways it can be true that like seeming too eager can potentially be a turnoff, but in other ways a lot of that stuff, it just reminds me of, hey guys, here's how to be manipulative. And it's like, I don't know, like we're confronted with like shit that's trying to give you a gambling addiction all day long. Like I think we got enough manipulation in our lives.
Yeah, and manipulation is like, you can't stop once you start it, you can't stop doing it. Like it's not sustainable. And if all you want to do is get off, go jerk off to porn. Like if you just want to bust, it's going to be a lot faster and easier if you do that on your own and maybe try to have a real relationship with somebody. But yeah, it's just... and
I guess the thing that leave you on too is that a lot of people, I know that there's like a larger cohort now of young men who have not had sex yet, you know, at a much later age than was perhaps expected or typical of our generation. But I feel like there's not really any, to me, there's not really any utility. And I flash back to that episode of, what is it, MTV, was it like Sex in the 90s or whatever, where they were like contrasting the Dog brothers, who are just like these two Guidos who just go out to fucking get laid nonstop and just like huge pieces of shit, versus like guy in his like early 20s who's still a virgin, and like the Dog brothers like teach him how to dress, and he's like not really interested, but he's like going along with it for the show. And then he sees the girl they hook up with, and she's just like a girl on coke in a bar in New Jersey, and he's like, yeah, I don't need this. And then like they come back later, like 2 years later, and like this guy's like, yeah, I recently exited a relationship, but I met someone and like we loved each other, and like I had sex with her and like it was great. And he's like, meanwhile the Dog brothers are still going after just being sleazy Guido dudes who like have a van with mattresses in it that they fuck girls outside the club in, and it's just gross. And it's like, to me, there was a little bit of sleight of hand there, but like this guy just seemed genuine, and like he wound up in a relationship because he was just going to be genuine. And it's like, so who came out on top? The guys who probably have had sex with like 1,000 people are like hollow shells of humanity, like nothing behind their eyes, or someone who was a virgin until he was like 23. Who cares? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like, man, we could talk forever.
We could.
You got to go and I got to go, but this is an interesting pivot though. I'm interested in seeing if we can, where we can take this, because I wanted to talk about some fucked up stuff in America, but honestly, like I think this is the thing that, if anything, like we can't do much about Donald Trump being a piece of shit, but like we can at least talk about like what we have learned as dudes.
And I think, you know, there is all this talk about we need to find the Joe Rogan of the left. And I don't even think politics has anything to do with it. I just think you need to find, you know, people like you and I who have gone through life, and we've gone through successes and failures, and we've gotten fucked up in one way or another, sometimes by our own hand, sometimes by outside forces. And at this point, we are always going to, like, you and I are always going to be truthful on this podcast about ourselves. I was a piece of shit when I was 21 years old. I have no problem admitting that. You know, that was half a lifetime ago for me. And I don't want to think of this as like, we need to find some way to counterbalance by telling you the opposite, but like telling you that those things that you're hearing are not how you have to live.
No.
That's not a pathway that you have to go down. You as a person, whether you're a man, woman, or anything anything in between, however you want to identify, there is not a set like here's what you need to do to become a man or a woman. You and I love to garden and cook. Those are not masculine traits, but they are things that we like to do. And you and I, being comfortable with who we are, with knowing who we are, because we've been walking around for about 40 plus years, we know that we're okay, or that we're comfortable with that. And you can do, if you are one of those 22-year-olds that's listening to this, somehow you're looking for the Joe Rogan of the left, here it is. Don't be an asshole. That's all it is. Respect other people and understand that another person, like however you feel, another person can feel that way too.
Yeah, and some people are going to be assholes to you, and at the end of the day, there's not. It doesn't do any good to then turn around and be like, well, I'm gonna fuck over the rest of the world because I got fucked over. I guess what I would say too is this. I mean, the side throwaway joke I was going to make is that, like, you're right, gardening and cooking, not stereotypically masculine behaviors, and that's why we salute the proud trailblazers in the drug dealer community, because between weed and crack, they made gardening and cooking into masculine behaviors.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that I feel like the proof is here. Take to this and think of it, use it however you will. If what these guys talking about, like incel shit, the 80-20 stuff, all these things, if they are right, then how on earth have Francis and I been able to meet partners who respect us, that we respect, who have their estimable qualities, could absolutely have found other partners if they wanted to? They have careers. We have kids. We are happy. We are successful within what we do. We are content in our lives, and we are trying to improve our lives. There's no fucking way we are some elite group of men that are the genetically elect, able to pass on their fucking genes. There's no way. We are not in the slightest. We know this. We acknowledge it. And if we even try to explain the rhetorical argument I'm making here, framing it this way, if I tried to explain this to Cynthia, even though she recognized like the sort of manosphere terms I'm describing, she'd be like, yeah, anyone who believes that is just fucking insane, because look at you. And yet, right. You know, and that doesn't hurt my feelings. That doesn't hurt my feelings at all. At all. I think it's funny because it's true, because I am a regular guy. Few things I'm pretty good at, some things I'm really bad at, and I've tried to learn from my mistakes and not be an asshole. And when it became very obvious in my relationship that there were certain lines that if I crossed them in my own behavior, my own negative patterns of behavior, that it would permanently damage the relationship and we would not stay together. And I decided the relationship was worth it, and I would do my best to change. And like some kind of weird fucking parable, it's like, and it seems I kind of did.
Yeah.
I was able to some extent. I don't really drink anymore, and I don't want to. Like, I can if I socially fine, but like I don't get blackout. You know what? It's weird. And guess what? I'm happily married and I have a kid and I have a great life. Yeah. So
you're not going to do much better than me and Nate at this point.
Either believe that what makes you happy is a fucking rented Lambo and like some crypto scam shit, and I don't know, multi-level marketing, fucking drop shipping, and goddamn sex trafficking if you're Andrew Tate. All these objective signs of wealth that mean nothing. Treating women like shit, manipulating and abusing them, and getting jacked in a way that is only really attractive to insecure men and gay men. I'm being real. Cool. Which of these do you want? Which of these do you really want? Because you know what? You can't fuck a Lamborghini. I'm really sorry. You can try, but you can't. You're not going to be able to pass on your genetic material that way. Italian futurists probably wanted to, but they failed.
Yeah. But you can be jacked and be an all right guy. The guy who plays Reacher is really big and
there's nothing wrong with being jacked. Like,
be jacked, but don't be an asshole about it. Don't do a bunch of steroids and melt your brain, please.
Also, don't assume that, like, I mean, there's this degree to which when we talk about fitness and health and stuff, like these kind of objective measures are very, very different than the idea that you have to have like 3% body fat and, you know, look like a fucking like character select screen for a fighting game. Like, if you do, great. If that's important to you, great. There's nothing wrong with wanting it. But if you are privileging that with the idea that that's going to be some sort of like genetic advantage, or like, you know, that's the only way you can feel good about yourself, like, it's not really good behavior. And I'll be real with you. Most women I've talked to, while dudes with abs are hot, objectively hot to them in the same way that, like, you know, the sort of men will look at the sort of like massively objectified sort of porn star bodies and be like, yep, that sure is every notional concept of reproductive ability maximized to an extreme extent. Like, it doesn't, that's not the make or break thing. And I can, for every woman I know who would be like, oh, that guy has abs, or every guy I know who thinks the only way they can get a girl is to have abs, I know at least three or four personal situations I've experienced where like girls either said that they just like, it just kind of looked weird, or like they laughed at how obsessed dudes were with having abs and always finding excuses to show them, that it made them completely unattractive. It made them in their minds the same as like a 12-year-old trying to fucking impress them because he like, I don't know, had like a big rapper medallion he was wearing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm being genuine with you, man. I'm being genuine with you.
Yeah. If I ask my wife, like, what would you rather have? Me to have abs or me to bring you a plate of cheese and share it with you on occasional nights? She's going to say the fucking cheese. And that's going to, and good, because I don't want abs, because that is a line I can't go down. That's too much exercise. That's too much like eating broccoli and diet
stuff
chicken.
too. It's the exercise part doesn't really bother me, but it's the diet part. It's just that I think that the diet part makes me it makes me feel depressed sometimes in terms of
counting macros. I'm not doing that.
Macros isn't bad. Macros is fine. It's just more the when you're actually cutting like that, the degree to which you have to really cut, like it's just unpleasant. I mean,
I get real hangry too. I can't.
Yeah, I do too. We've gone long, but this is fun, man. So let's wrap it up though.
Yeah. If you like what you're listening to, of course, we have our bonus episodes on What a Hell of a Way, or Patreon.com. What a Hell of a Way to Die. We have some new stuff coming out. I have a interview with a reporter talking about the Armed Forces Brewing Company and its rise and inevitable fall of what's his name, Makuya, and trying to sell the shittiest beer in the world. Yeah. No, that company's defunct now. It's fine, because fuck that guy.
The guy who's like, the two things I know him for is three things: killing bin Laden, never shutting up about killing bin Laden, and then saying like, in the Warrior Society, I would make you my underage boy slaves or something like that. Right. It's like, that's kind of a fucked up thing to say.
He also got thrown off an airplane for being drunk and not wearing a mask. So, you know, so that's coming out. That'll be coming out pretty soon. A lot of great stuff coming. So that will be all available on the Patreon. And of course, there's the store, whatahellofawaytodad.com. Nate, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking with us, going a little bit over time, but I think we had a really good conversation. If you have a 22-year-old male in your life who is, who is confused.
If you're the 22-year-old being made to listen to this, and you made it this far, brother, I appreciate you. You don't have to like the show. You can be like, these dudes are, you know, whatever neologism slur you guys have invented, but like, you made it this far, so then pat yourself on the back. That shows that you care about the person who asked you to listen to it, or you know how to fake it, and those are useful skills.
Yeah, so give us $5 a month now, because we've given you some life advice. Everybody, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.